No small talk where I, Quincy, see if you feel the same way. The maddening thing about whenever I'm depressed is not realizing or recognizing that I was depressed until the end of it. That feeling of coming up for air and realizing that I was living underground because I had absolutely nothing to give anyone is dizzying. Every single drop of energy I have in that moment is usually being funneled back into myself via a slow dripping sink where the water is made up of the bare minimum routine and taxing but necessary self investigation. That was all I have the capacity for when I'm in a moment like that, which my therapist says is a lot, and I'm learning to accept. The rare occasions when I do see someone when I'm in this state, they can see my unhideable weariness, and they always take a shot at soothing, which I quickly block. Another habit I'm trying to stop. But I think that taking everything in stride has always been my best performance. Denying something is wrong. I don't know what it comes from. It's like if I acknowledge that undercurrent of sadness that's gnawing at my spirit, it'll somehow make it worse. I have to ask myself, like, does it come from like a lifetime of feeling like me and my emotions are too much? Or from a neglect that forced me into healing and dealing with my own emotions and isolation? And can I fully heal under the circumstances of forced isolation? Or does healing, like most other things, take a village? I have come to the conclusion that it does. Concepts that I was introduced to recently was the more emotional someone is, the more self-involved they become, truly being in your feelings. When I was introduced to this concept, I had a resistance to it. Like my ego was wanting to deny it because pride. I just felt like there was no way that my reason for being sad, mad, or fearful was due to me retreating into my head. And like surely this emotional state I was in is caused by this communication, that unmet expectation, or the other person. And this is just a sidebar, and although I'm a direct person, I truly believe that vagueness is the pandemic of communication. We're relying on it too much, and it doesn't work. Anyways, self-involved has become synonymous with self-care, having strong boundaries, being evolved or healed, giving us a convenient out when it comes to being accountable for what we do and the people we care about. This became so clear to me with the fallout from with a friend I had earlier this year actually. So basically after months of attempting to see and hang out with this former best friend, I sent a lengthy and vulnerable text. In that long text, which I want to say I never regret sending a long text, I voiced my concerns for our friendship. I was worried I'd been downgraded, and I was wondering if we were actually okay. The text did conclude with an expression of love, letting them know the ball was in their court, and that my door would always be open. And most importantly, a clear directive that there was no pressure to respond. The response I received to this text approximately 3 weeks later was filled with vitriol. It was absolutely scathing. It was a proactive attempt to just like twist every single thing I said. And therapy language was weaponized against me to make me feel like a piece of shit. That's happening, right? So this is a common opinion. I believe that the use of therapy speak to over-index every feeling, problem, and each inconvenience is sending the collective into a predicament of being able to convey feelings while not feeling the actual feelings. In our feelings, but not feeling our feelings is making connection more difficult than ever. I did make the choice to step out of this friend's life after this. Not merely because of the text, but because it was another incident in a pattern of incidents where her availability has always been based on her convenience. And once I took a step back from my hurt feelings and I'm in and can have distance from it now, I am able to empathize that I would have only gotten a response like that from a person who was in a hurt place. You don't get an I don't owe anyone anything from people who are receiving what they need. I think that when you're receiving what you need, your ability to give truly overflows. I know that's how it is for me and what I've seen with others too, right? So, like, she was being honest about that, and it doesn't make it fair, though, to take it out on someone who you claim has nothing to do with it. If we're going to be in our feelings, be honest about that, but there's no need to flip it to bring someone else down to your level. I will add that me and this particular friend had been in this situation before, where neither of us could give what the other needed. Like, we were both just walking parallel in our own pain and self-destruction. And it just creates this huge gorge that neither of us could cross. When I'd gone back to our friendship after our last huge falling out, I assumed truly that we could work through anything. So, to my dismay, when this came up and we weren't able to work through this, I had to sit with the reality that this would just continue to repeat again and again and again and again. And that's a reality I can't accept anymore. I've reckoned with and now reconciled my relationship expectations, which includes what I want and what I bring. Within these realizations, I've lost relationships that I expected to last a lifetime. The part I cannot take back is that up until now, most of my life, I have prioritized not being alone versus actually being seen. Not being alone and prioritizing that aspect has time and time again put me firmly in the roles I play for others. And when I get deeper into those roles and feelings, and what that means to me, I find myself sequestered in a prison of my own making. I become resentful of who I am for a person, and the fact that who I am for them doesn't feel like myself. I am lonely in that feeling when I try to step out of the role and be seen. I'm not seen, I'm not heard. And I truly feel that I only have myself to blame for upholding an emotional architecture of a relationship that only serves the person that I'm in relation with and nothing for myself. I have to be more careful about who I choose to be in my life, right? And then I'm left swallowing a hard pill that when I choose someone, they don't necessarily choose me. And I think an even harder pill for me to swallow at times is that even if someone is choosing me back, that doesn't necessarily result in me feeling chosen. I'm honestly learning in real time how to trust this feeling, differentiate it, and also saying it when I feel it, which is tough if you're a dissociator like me. Anyways, when I begin to speak on these dynamics that I am partially responsible for, people always lose their shit on me. Suddenly, it's me who's abandoning people by bringing up my feelings. I build a foundation so strong on my own back that when I step back and from under that, it crumbles. My inability to speak on these feelings leaves me feeling isolated, and it inadvertently tells the people that I'm in a relationship with that these feelings don't exist at all. And it's frankly not true. As I've backed away from these connections in particular, I really disappeared into myself. I started this search for safety, a place to discover what makes me feel cared for or seen. I put myself in this classroom of learning where I would find out who I was and why so much of my identity was based on who I was in relation with. When I go into this emotionally off grid moment, I fail the people who actually see me in my multitudes. I get so deep in my own shit that I neglect the other people I care about who deserve the truth. I fumble my opportunity to be seen. I fumble my chance to be cared for. And last year, and honestly, even into this year, I spent months in that mindset of individualism and convinced myself that to be alone was to be safe. And I'm here to say I was absolutely wrong for this. And I will probably do it again. Old habits die hard. Nevertheless, the isolation was necessary and it did feel good for a bit. There is a recalibration that happened in me in those months where it did lead to many of the answers I was seeking. The most unexpected answer I got, and it was hard for me, is that connection is a top priority for me, even if the way that I go about connection needs improving. I just really shouldn't let this part of myself languish in the dark. In this digital age of isolation, I mean, it permits this acceptance of unrest, distrust, disempowerment. Isolation is and always has been a tool for oppression. So I'm just gonna put that out there because it's true. Reflecting back on my conversation with my friend, her inability to give was completely based on the necessity to grind for capitalism. And then it's bolstered by therapy speak, which led her to the conclusion that she was doing all this shit by herself. And that connection is secondary when the going gets rough. It truly blinded her to the option that maybe connection could relieve a little bit of this pressure, even if it was temporary. I don't blame her for that because we've all been there. We've all been there. Dare I say that we are collectively living in a moment, for better or worse, and to an extent against our will, of disconnection, and this is most definitely against our nature. People are like calling out for third spaces while simultaneously being afraid to leave the house. Phone calls have been deemed intrusive while we can see what other people are doing literally 24 hours of the day. The inability to connect is a responsibility we remove from ourselves, and then we say, I can't do this because of my diagnosis, because of me needing to make money. And we always want to just reschedule to some later date where we'll be rich in time, money, and emotional expansiveness that'll suddenly make this so easy. But in actuality, the ability to connect does not arrive the moment you're in your best state. It's forged through that practice of trying even when you don't want to. There are moments I am absolutely embarrassed by my desire to connect. And it's more than desire, it's a need for me, really. I feel cringe that my muse is the way I exist in relationship to other people. I feel shame for wanting to be seen and not always knowing how, and or continually picking people who show me time and time again that they lack the capacity to do that. It's okay to like crawl back to the people you disappeared from. The reals always will welcome you back, even if it requires that entrance fee of personal accountability. Self-disclosure is a pillar to connection, owning your shit, owning your truth, taking in someone else. And it's important for yourself and others. I think sometimes that gaze of another person forces that feeling you're avoiding. I think another person can be the sounding board that moves you to peace. And yeah, and being open with others can and will absolutely result in you owing them openness at some later date. Reciprocity is a tenet of human existence. It's how we build, it's how we have built. And even in this era where that idea feels uniquely vulnerable and terrifying, if we let this fall to the wayside, we will stop growing collectively and individually. We will find ourselves solitary, resenting people in pain and in a disconnection that's absolutely impossible to get out of. By neglecting the practice of messy interactions to protect our own image, we actually lose sight of ourselves and what we truly, truly look like. When we avoid others, we lose track of our own feelings in that vortex of rumination. Disappearing on people we love is at times the first step on disappearing on ourselves. After my stint in emotional isolation, I can now say that I will always take the risk of connecting with others. The risk to me is always going to be worth the squeeze. The loss, if it results in that, is a lesson learned. The gain will always be worth the effort. I have to remind myself that I have to be wrong to be right, and that when it's good, it's so fucking good. And yeah, that's my small talk. Much love for those who vibe with this and those who don't. It takes all kinds, so either way, let me know.